Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS. My name is Abhijit Srivastava and I am welcoming you in Daily News Analysis. Today is 19th January 2024 and we are picking some of the important articles from newspapers such as The Hindu and Indian Express, which are important for UPSC examination. If you like our initiative, please share it with your friends. Let's look into a brief idea over the articles that we are going to discuss here. Firstly, in the page number 10, the Hindu Delhi edition, you will find an article which is Beleaguered Indian Media Co-Vadis. It's an article written by Shashi Tharoor, a very prominent Indian leader, and which raises various ethical concerns over the functioning of media in India. Second article which we have chosen is in page number 12 of an Indian Express, which talks about the young and struggling, which is related with the education system. It also talks about the ASER report by Pratham Foundation. Third article is from page number 16 of The Hindu, which talks about the GM crops, its implications on environment, politics, society, and economy. Also, we will discuss why GM crops is important in current socio-economic landscape. The fourth article is important from prelims point of view, that is there in page number 12 of The Hindu. It talks about how satellites track the weather. So, in this article, we are going to discuss all the technical details of weather forecasting. Last article is related with the China, Philippines and places in news, that is there in the page number 17 of The Hindu. And in this article, we will be discussing strategically important show-all. What is show-all? We will be looking. So let's start this discussion. Let's discuss first article for today's discussion. It states Beleaguered Indian Media Co-Vadis. This Co-Vadis is a Latin term which means where are you headed? This whole article is written by Mr. Shashi Tharoor and he is raising various ethical concerns over the functioning of media. He is asking about the role of media in a democracy. He is asking about the media accountability, and he is also discussing about the media ethics. But how it's relevant for our UPSC examination? In GS paper 2 syllabus, you will see a topic is there, important aspect of governance, transparency and accountability. This media also considered as a watchdog of democracy. Media monitors the functioning of government and controls their functioning. And that is how it increases the accountability and the governance. There is another topic in GS paper 2 itself, that is development sector, under which civil society comes. And this media is also part of civil society. So that is why this article becomes important. Also from GS paper 4 point of view, ethical concerns and dilemma in the government and private institution, because media is private institution, code of ethics and code of conduct. That is why this topic becomes very relevant for UPSC exam. Let's look into previous year question and see the importance of this topic. In 2016, UPSC asked a question, use of internet and social media by non-state actors for subversive activities is a major security concern. So you can analyze through this question that UPSC is now more keen towards asking multidisciplinary question. Now they are linking the media and the internal security together, right? And they are asking questions. You should be prepared for this. How have these been misused in the recent past? Suggest effective guidelines to curb the above threat. Okay, so we have understood the importance of this topic. Let's understand the context first. Shashi Tharoor is more concerned over the functioning of electronic media. He is not discussing about the social media. He is not discussing about the print media. So he is talking about the electronic media. For example, TV channels. He traced the development of this electronic media, and he argued that in post-liberalization era, government controlled the news media channels or media channels. How? For example, before liberalization, Doordarshan was there, All India Radio was there, and all these entities were funded by government directly. And that is how government had a control over them. But what about liberalization? After liberalization, government allowed several entities, private entities, to enter into this sector. After entering into this sector, they became free from, or this media become free from the government, right? Now they are not funded by the government. But this is not the complete picture of media at this time, right? This is not the complete picture, and this is the argument that is put up by the Shashi Tharoor this time. And he said Indian journalism underwent style and substance changes, but which is not always positive. There are negative aspects of these changes as well. So what are those changes? We'll look forward. But before understanding the negative aspects or negative changes, we need to understand what is the role of media in a democracy. So let's understand this. There are three major sectors in our society. One is state, that is government. Second is business. And third is citizenry, right? Media is a linkage between all these three sectors. How? It disseminates information from one sector to another sector, like this. Also, it mobilizes energy in one sector and pass it to the another sector. For example, let's suppose government is making a scheme. All the information related to that particular scheme will be disseminated to the citizenry through these media channels. Also, let's suppose a business entity is creating a product, a consumable product. The information related to that particular product will be disseminated to the citizenry or the government through these media channels, right? And vice versa, it's going on. Similarly, the energy mobilization works. How? For example, in Swachh Bharat mission, media tried to sensitize people over this matter of Swachhata, and they tried to mobilize people. And these mobilization went to the state sector, right? Through this process, we see various functions that are being performed by media in our democratic setups. For example, it disseminates information, right? And media informs citizens about politics, policies, and events. And this is how media is creating informed, aware, and responsible citizenry. Informed, aware, and responsible citizenry. It also keep government accountable. How? It works as a watchdog. It scrutinizes government functioning, its policies, and it holds government officials accountable. It also facilitates debates. Media offers platform for public debate, crucial for our healthy democracy. Also, it represents the diversity. Media should represent diverse perspectives, providing citizens with various opinions and ideas. It also functions as an educational entity. So, it also performs educational functions, right? But Shashi Tharoor has raised multiple problems or multiple ethical concerns over media, and these can be clubbed in three elements. One is corporatization, lack of ethics and role of or control of government, right? Let's discuss corporatization. It talks about three problems here. TOP. T stands for TRP. O stands for ownership. And P stands for paid news. TRP stands for television rating point. Now, after corporatizing the media entities or entering of private sector into this media, we are witnessing that media nowadays are working more for profit. They are now profit oriented, and now they are not citizen oriented or society oriented, right? They are working for the TRPs. How they get the TRPs? When they sensationalize the issues in the name of breaking news. So they are sensationalizing the breaking news, right? Through which they are attracting mass towards it, and after getting high TRP, they are getting more advertisements, and this is the basic source of their revenue, right? Also, these media corporate houses are controlled by some houses or some particular persons, right? And they are controlling for their vested interest. Third thing is paid news. For example, I am a minister. I did some work and I give money to the media house, right? Now, media houses are only showing my works and not showing the others' work, right? This is how it is opinionating the masses, and people are thinking that this person is very good and others are not performing well, right? So this is also paid news. What about lack of ethics? They are marred by fake news. They are not representing the diversity at this time. Also, media trial is a basic phenomena that we are witnessing nowadays. What is fake news? They are disseminating news, or they are disseminating information which is not real. They are disseminating fake news. We must have heard about the fake news regarding the denomination after the demonetization, right? So they are also disseminating the fake news for the vested interest, right? Also, Shashi Tharoor argued that these media houses are controlled or concentrated by some particular caste and class groups. So these media houses are not working for the diversity of India. They are not representing. And that is why they are not sensitized enough towards these diversities. Also, media trial. Apart from diversity, apart from fake news, media trial is a biggest issue in terms of lack of ethics. How? They are neglecting judiciary, they are neglecting law enforcement agencies, they are bypassing these institutions, and they are giving judgment by their own. So this is also a very crucial concern for ethics as far as media is concerned. Also, government is somehow controlling the functioning of the media houses, and these media houses, in lieu of some advertisement from the government, they are distracting people from the basic questions that they should ask from the government, right? So this is how the government control is still there, and through these control, government are distracting citizenry from the basic questions. They are not asking the real question. They are concerned about some peripheral issues, right? The emphasis on breaking news that we have already seen. In the lure of TRPs, they are spreading the breaking news. They are sensationalizing the issues in the name of breaking news, in the lure of TRP, and they are distracting people from the real issues, right? So they are doing media trials. They are targeting individuals. They are These media entities are now becoming the witness, prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner by themselves. Also, they are not verifying the facts. They are spreading fake news. They are spreading paid news, right? Also, the biggest problem is sensational news has become a tool for mass distraction, diverting the public from essential questions of government accountability. So, should government put curbs on media? So, there are two basic aspects. One is legal and another is ethical. How? Legal. Article 19 gives fundamental right to every citizen, every entity in India for freedom of speech and expression. And this is legal aspect. You should not curb media because Constitution is providing legal, not just legal, but fundamental right to these entities. The second thing is the ethical concern. We need better journalism. We need not less journalism, right? So media houses, they are working as a watchdog. They should not be controlled. There should not be less journalism, but we need a better journalism, for which Shashi Tharoor has recommended various measures. So, how to make media effective and honest institution? Let's look into that. He advised every media channels to promote fact checking. Not just media houses, but our common citizens should also do some fact checking, right? So, journalists should not be forced by their employers to rush and break the news. Instead, they should be empowered to withhold stories until they are certain about accuracy of their facts and accusations. Secondly, he argued improved journalistic training. Every media houses should promote this journalistic training. We should demand improved journalistic training at recognized media institutes, focusing on values like accuracy, integrity, and fairness. When false or intentionally misleading information is published or broadcast, TV and print news outlets should issue retractions with the same level of visibility as the original content. Third, embrace diverse perspective in the newsrooms. We need to incorporate diversity so that people get sensitized over the issues of other people, other side of the coin. And newsrooms should be mandated to cultivate a more varied journalistic environment. Every story promoting a specific viewpoint must allocate space for the alternative perspective or a refutation, right? Further, he argued that restricting business or political entity in media should be people-centric, media should be society-centric, it should not be profit-oriented, right? Government should implement laws and regulation to restrict the control of multiple news organizations by a single business or political entity, right? He further argued that single regulator for both print and electronic media should be there. So we need regulation, but that regulation should comes from the media sector itself. It should not be regulated by the government, right? And this suggestion endorsed by the TRAI and the Parliamentary Committee on Information Technology as well, right? So what is the conclusion of this whole debate? The conclusion is, as India's literacy rate rise, so does the number of media consumers. They deserve a media that contributes to shaping an informed, educated, and politically aware society, ready to hold government accountable. To be recognized globally as a responsible player and a modern democracy, India must take itself seriously, starting with responsible media practices. Let's discuss another article which is related to education system in India. There are a series of articles related to the issue, but I have chosen only two of them. One is from page number 10 of The Hindu, Delhi edition, and another is from page number 12 of Indian Express, Delhi edition. Both of them talks about the status of education system in India it talks about the ACER report, the trends and challenges that are there in the ACER report, and they also talk about the new education policy 2020. But how is it important for our UPSC objective? So in GS paper 2, you'll find a topic, issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to health, education, and human resources. Firstly, this education and human resources, specifically the skill development, is directly related to the educational system in India, and it is being discussed in the ACER report itself. Secondly, India is in the phase of demographic transition, and if we are not focusing on education, skill development of our population, specifically the youth population, then this transition will become nightmare for us. So instead of getting demographic dividend, instead of reaping demographic dividend, we'll reach to demographic disaster. And thirdly, this whole ACER report and the NGO Pratham Foundation, which publishes this ACER report, is a classical example on how a part of civil society or an NGO can be helpful in monitoring and assessing the governmental schemes. Secondly, assessing and collecting the data for socio-economic status of Indian population. And thirdly, recommending policy to the government, right? So let's move forward and understand the context first. Pratham Foundation, it's the name of the NGO. It released one of the most insightful survey on status of education in India. That is ACER report. What is this ACER? Annual Status of Education Report on 17th of January 2024. This data 17th January 2024 is not important, but this is just to show you that this issue is in the news. The whole ACER report is based on the data collected for the year 2022-23, right? So first understand about the ACER report itself, why it's important for us, and then we'll see the findings and the recommendations given by the ACER report. So it's the oldest survey of its own kind in our country. It's an annual survey, and the main purpose of the survey is to identify the status and gaps in the educational system in India. What is the methodology that they are using? Firstly, these are the surveys conducted by Pratham. These are not the census. How both are different? Census collect data for each and every member in the target population. But survey, as far as survey is concerned, survey collects data only for the subsets of the population, right? But those subsets should represent the diversity of every section of the society, right? So it should be look like every subsection of the or cross section of the society. Secondly, it is a household based survey. The major unit of this survey is household. Thirdly, it's a field survey. It is not based upon the data that are given by the government or any other surveys. Rather, it's the first-hand field survey. Also, it's not based upon the armchair theorist principles, right? So it's a field survey, and that is why it becomes most authentic source for the policy recommendation in India. It also gives insights into range of the key parameters with respect to the education. With enrollment patterns, what is the enrollment ratio? What is the dropout ratio? Is there any gender disparity or not? It also talks about the learning levels, that is basic numeracy skills, foundational literacy, and overall learning outcomes. It also talks about the digital access, whether students have access to digital gadgets, digital services or not, whether they are sensitized enough with respect to digital security threats with respect to those gadgets or not. It also talks about the impact of pandemics on Indian educational system. So let's understand the key findings of ACER report 2023. But before looking into that, the major target audience of this ACER report was rural, or the students from rural districts of India, which is in the range of 14 to 18 years age, right? So this was their target audience on which they have conducted this survey. Okay. According to this ACER report, half of these students are struggling with basic mathematics, to which they should have expertise in their third or fourth standard itself. So this is the biggest problem in basic numeracy skills. As far as foundational literacy is concerned, about 25% cannot read a class 2nd level test in their mother tongue itself. There is also gender disparity in these learning outcomes. Boys are performing better than the girls. So these are the 3 findings as far as learning outcome is concerned. Now come to the enrollment pattern. 86.8% of these students are enrolled to educational institution, and that is a good picture. But there is a variation in the enrollments in terms of age. For example, 3.9% of the students at the age of 14 are not in the school, right? But at the age of 18, this rate becomes 32.6%. And this is very bad picture of enrollment pattern. Also, most of the students in this target group opt for humanities after class 11th. So in the class 11th or after class 11th, most of them are opting for humanities. So there is a very less inclination towards STEM. What is STEM? Science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So there is very less inclination towards STEM courses, which says about dismal picture of our educational system, because it is not creating employable workforce, right? So as far as STEM enrollments is concerned and the disparity is concerned, 28.1% girls are enrolling for STEMs and 36.3% boys are enrolling for STEM courses. As far as vocational training is concerned, only 5.6% students have enrolled for vocational training. Apart from that, ACER report also found out that this private institutions nationwide, it went up from 25% in 2018 to 30% in 2022, which says that it is creating pressure on the pockets of the parents. Also, 90% of the youngsters surveyed had a smartphone, according to this ACER survey, but they were unaware of any online safety settings. That means there is the digital divide in terms of awareness with respect to online safety, right? So what are the challenges and corrective measures that are found by the ACER report. The findings highlight the challenges in reading and arithmetic skills that we have discussed. Apart from that, it says that from 2014 to 2022, there is a flat learning trajectories in middle school grades, that is from class 5th to class 8th. Also, there is a very minimal improvement in the learning outcomes, the overall learning outcomes. It also talks about the Right to Education Act, which was enacted in 2009, which intended to ensure universal access to education, but it leaves gaps to be addressed for its fulfillment for every child. ACER report data also showed that more than 80% of the parents which haven't completed their 10 years of schooling, they also want their children to be educated. And that is why it is creating more pressure on their pockets that we have seen in terms of private tuitions, right? Apart from that, this ACER report also talks about the National Education Policy 2020, which prioritizes achieving universal foundational literacy and numeracy in primary school by 2025. But there is a huge gap in what we envisage to achieve and what we are doing in terms of data, right? States have made their effort under the Nipun Bharat Mission. What is Nipun Bharat Mission? National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding and Numeracy Bharat Mission, which focuses on numeracy and understanding of the students ranging from 3 to 9 years. But there is a need for substantial catch-up given India's diversity. A comprehensive strategy for learning improvement, especially in basic skill, is urgently needed for upper primary grades. We have to work upon the 4 pillars, that is MITA, MITA. Firstly, apart from early childhood educational outcomes, we also have to work upon the middle childhood educational outcomes. This early childhood educational outcome was a focused area for the right to education. So we have to also focus on the middle childhood educational outcome. Also, in terms of infrastructure, we need to do a lot. As far as teachers are concerned, we have to fill the vacancies and we also have to improve the teachers' quality. Also, as far as accountability is concerned, we have to ensure accountability with educational outcome. Also, we need to strengthen the governance structure of the educational systems, educational institutions in India. The next article is related with the GM crops. What is GM crops? It's genetically modified crops. And the article states that GM crops will make edible oil cheaper. This is the argument put up by the government in a Supreme Court case related with the GM crops, uses of GM crops and adoption of GM crops in Indian scenario, right? So this article raises 2 basic points. First is GM crops and their importance in addressing socio-economic challenges and the concerns over GM crops. How it is related with our UPSC exam? In UPSC syllabus GS paper 3, technology in agriculture, under this topic GM crops can be placed. Okay, so let's look into this matter from a previous year question point of view. In 2011, UPSC asked this question, a genetically engineered form of brinjal. Now they are discussing about the GM crop, right? known as BT brinjal has been developed. The objective of this is A. to make it pest resistant, B. to improve its taste and nutritive qualities, C. to make it drought resistant, and D. to make it shelf life longer. The correct answer is A. Let's move forward to understand the context first, and then we'll see the question itself. In submission before Supreme Court, in that particular case that we have mentioned earlier, center says that GM oil is already being used in India in some other form, that we are importing oils from other countries, and those oil are being made by the GM crops itself. So now, if we are growing these oil seeds indigenously, it will definitely be helpful in reducing the oil prices in India. Not the fuel prices, but the edible oil prices, right? Okay. So, firstly, we need to understand what is GM crops. So, genetically modified or GM crops, these are technically referred as transgenic crops. What is transgenic crops? When genomes are modified, but these modifications are not natural, rather man-made, this is called transgenic crops, right? So technically it's a transgenic crop. Economically or in general terms, we call it as a genetically modified crops, right? This is done using genetic engineering method of rDNA technology. What is rDNA technology? rDNA stands for recombinant DNA technologies. Let's suppose there are two organisms. One is target organism, another is desired organism. Let's suppose you are producing a potato which is not able to protect itself from a pest, right? So it needs some kind of modification. So we need modification in the target organism, right? And there is a desired trait in a particular organism through which these particular organism can protect itself from that particular pest, right? So it has certain desired traits. And these traits are because of some DNA, right? So what we are doing, we are modifying the DNA or genomic sequence of these target organism with the help of the DNA of that particular organism which has this desired traits. This technology is known as rDNA technology, right? Such method involves bestowing a specific attribute to the plant in order to attain certain favorable objectives such as insect resistance, temperature resistance, increased yield, etc., etc., right? So what are the issues associated with GM crops? Broadly, it can be categorized into 4 headings. One is environmental concern, another is economic concern, another is social concern, and lastly, political concern. There is a fear of unknown. If we are modifying some organism at this level, at DNA level, we don't know the future of the outcomes, right? So that is their fear of unknown. Secondly, it will always promote monoculture. What is monoculture? If something has good abilities in comparison to other competitors, you will definitely go for that particular thing. For example, if a potato crop or the variety of potato crop has a lot of beneficial qualities, you will definitely go for that particular crop, right? Other crop will be neglected. Other crops will be neglected. In this case, a monoculture will be developed. Everybody will be willing to produce only that variety of the crop, right? It will create a monoculture, right? This will hamper the biodiversity, right? And in case of any future disaster against this particular monoculture, it will become a threat for the existence of the whole biodiversity, right? So this monoculture will be supported by this GM crops, and in turn it will reduce the biodiversity and it will become a threat for the existence in upcoming future, right? Also, it will create irreversible phenomena. It is kind of irreversible phenomena. You cannot reverse the things. You cannot undo the changes. If you have done this thing, then it will be move forward, right? It will not be a reversible phenomena, and that is the most significant, crucial and critical aspect as far as environmental issues is concerned with respect to GM crops. As far as economy or economic parameter is concerned, it will increase the inequality. How? Any kind of corporatization or capitalism which we infuse in agriculture automatically increases the inequality, right? So it will increase the economic inequality. What about social aspect? It will increase a new access of stratification. Someone who can adopt this technology will be beneficial. Someone who are not able to adopt this technology will get away from the market, right? It will create a new axis of stratification, right? What about political? Agriculture is a state subject and center is taking decision on the GM crops. This will create unnecessary conflict between center and state, and this is a biggest political concern as far as GM crops is concerned. Apart from these issues, we have several other issues as well. For example, these GM crops must elicit sustained and protective response in the detection of desired objective during the trials and in commercial practice. So this is not just a case of science, but it's also a chance, right? So it's not always that we are looking for a science. It's not complete science. It's also a chance, right? The necessary safety assessment must be done. Third is, transgenic plant can apply for commercial clearance only after it has proven to be demonstrably better than comparable non-GM crops, right? And lastly, they should not pose ecological harm that we have already discussed. So, who will decide that GM crops should be there or not? GM crops should be produced or not? So, there is a regulatory structure, one in terms of law, another in terms of bureaucratic structure. So, in terms of law, there is Act, Environmental Protection Act, under which rules for the manufacture, use, import and export and storage of hazardous microorganisms, genetically engineered organism or cells, 1989 is there, right? The same rules also regulate all genetically modification techniques and hence includes rDNA technologies too, right? The Department of Biotech under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, MOEFCC, is the implementing authority under which there is a GEAC, Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, which will assess, evaluate the functioning of that GM crops, whether it should be allowed to produce commercially or not. So these decisions are taken on the basis of appraisal done by the GEAC, right? Moreover, the FSSAI, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, it regulates GM foods in all aspects in India. So this is the regulatory structure. Why we need GM crops right now? As India become the most populous country in this world, India needs food security, right? And we know that India is full of poverty, inequality, etc., etc. So we need some kind of tools so that we can feed our population. So this is the biggest concern or biggest need for GM crops right now. Considering the favorable objectives as mentioned above, the GM crops are essential to increase agricultural productivity and food security, right? So to feed our population, we need some more productivity, we need more food crops, and that is why we need GM crops. Hence, adopting GM crops are being visualized as a tool to address poverty as well. GM crops can be a way forward to reduce the import burden as well. For example, we are importing GM oil. That is unnecessary expenditure on our import, right? If we are producing these oil seeds in our own farms, it will obliterate the unnecessary import burden, right? Moreover, India imports canola oil and soybean oil produced from GM seeds, right? So this is the case. The above benefit constitute the government's stand over the adoption of GM crops and their produce in India. But there are challenges, as we have already mentioned, that it's a state subject. The agriculture is a state subject, and lack of readiness by state to adopt the field trials of the GM crops is a biggest challenge in this adoption. The second thing is ecological concern. We have already mentioned. Also, there is no transparency in the process of adopting GM crops in fixation of accountability in the eventuality of failure, as mentioned in the petition by the GM Free India. GM Free India is an organization which has filed a petition against the GM crops, right? So, what could be the way forward? There are two basic points. One, for the adoption of GM crops, we need more field trial. And for that, we need more field trial plots, right? Also, we need some additional capital investment for the GM crops so that we can produce more and we can reduce our import burden, right? So, we need more field trial plots in the selected states. Also, we need more private investment in agriculture so that we can increase our productivity. So, this is all about the GM crops. Let's look into the another article which is important for prelims exam. It states how satellites track the weather. So, this article is talking about the weather forecasting, how it is being done, and what are the organizations associated with this weather forecasting, right? So, it's also important from GS paper 3 point of view, science and technology development and their applications and effects in everyday life. Let's look into the importance of this whole topic from previous year question prelims question, okay? So, in 2015, UPSC has asked this question: in which of the following activities are Indian remote sensing satellites used? Okay, so there are majorly two types of satellites. One, which is fixed if we look at that satellite from a particular point of view at the surface. So, at this surface, if we are looking at this satellite and if it is fixed, so this is one type of satellite, and another type of satellite which is moving as we compared from a particular point on the surface of the earth, right? If I want to give a signal to a satellite and that signal should be reflected to some other place, that satellite should be fixed. So, that is why this fixed satellites are being used in a communication purpose, right? But what about remote sensing satellites or the satellites which are using for the mapping of the resources which are there at the earth surface? So, for that we need moving satellites, okay? So, this question is asking about remote sensing satellite. So, that is why first, assessment of crop productivity, it can be used. Locating groundwater resources, it can be used. What about mineral exploration? That can also be used, because all these things are nothing but the resource mapping. But what about telecommunication? For that we need fixed satellites. So, that is why this option is incorrect. This option is also incorrect. So, option A is. So, what is the context of this whole article? It is just explaining the role of INSAT 3D and 3DR satellites in weather forecasting in India. So, what is weather forecasting? It is just predicting the conditions of the atmosphere for a given location and time, right? IMD is the agency, Indian Meteorological Department is an agency under the Ministry of Earth Sciences of Indian government. is the organization which is responsible for the weather forecasting, right? IMD is using INSET 3D, INSET 3DR, Kalpana 1, GSET 12, SCAT 1, OceanSat series and EOS series for the forecasting weather in India, right? So these are the important satellites that are being used for weather forecasting in India, right? This article specifically mentions the INSET 3D and 3DR satellites and its data for weather forecasting. So let's understand. So IMD relies heavily on the data from INSET 3D and 3DR satellites for weather forecasting in India. These satellites use advanced imaging technology to capture various atmospheric characteristics, providing valuable insights into weather pattern. So let's have a look on the pattern and the technology itself, right? So there are three basic dimensions of these satellite data. One is RGB imaging. R means red, G for green and B for blue. These are the color code that are given to a particular matrix, right? Second is a spectral band and third is a spatial resolution. Okay, so let's look into the RGB imaging. The satellites employ a RGB, red, green, blue imager, where the colors of the image are determined by two things: strength of solar reflectance and second is brightness temperature at different wavelengths, right? So what is solar reflectance? It is the ratio of amount of solar energy reflected to amount of solar energy incident, right? So it is the ratio between these two things, the amount of solar energy reflected with amount of solar energy incident on it, right? What is this brightness temperature? It's not simple temperature. It's a relationship between temperature of particular object or entity and the brightness related to that particular object or entity, right? So these are using spectral bands at different wavelengths. So the data encompasses multiple spectral bands: visible, short-wave infrared, and thermal infrared radiation. Each band provides specific information about the atmosphere, such as cloud types, snow cover, and the temperature variation, right? So these are the different spectral variation, and all of these spectral variation or spectral bands gives information about different or specific conditions, right? Spatial resolution. If we talk about spatial resolution, the satellites offer varying spatial resolution ranging from 2 kilometers in the visible band. So if we are looking at the visible band, it gives 2 kilometer range spatial variation. And if we are looking at the thermal infrared band, it will gives us 8 kilometer regional or spatial variation, right? So what is the result of the colors or how we are interpreting the colors? So as far as red is concerned, strong red indicates low solar reflectance, often associated with snow cover or thick clouds. Green shows presence of lower clouds or moisture droplets, and blue shows colder temperatures typically found in mature storm clouds or high altitude cirrus clouds, right? What could be the application of weather forecasting? So it can be used in fog monitoring, it can be used in cloud identification, and it can also be used in cyclone tracking. So these are the things that we should be knowing while discussing weather forecasting. Let's look into the last topic of today's discussion. It is related with China, Philippines agrees to ease tension. This whole article is all about a small shoal. What is shoal? Shoal is nothing but a sandbar or a depositional landforms which is just beneath the ocean water surface, right? The same shoal is known as Second Thomas Shoal by US. Philippines calls it as Ayungin Shoal and China calls it as Ren Ai Reef, right? So from UPSC point of view, it is important as a places in news. And let's look the whole places in news from UPSC previous year question point of view. so that we can get to know how this places in news is important. In 2015, UPSC asked this question: which one of the following countries of Southwest Asia does not open out to the Mediterranean Sea? So it wanted to know whether you know what or which countries are located around the Mediterranean Sea, right? Also, in 2014, UPSC asked about the location of Turkey, right? So that is how places in news is important. So what is the context? Context is, like we already know, that China follows expansionist policy. It tries to expand its territory. While doing so, it came into conflict with other countries as well. So supposedly, the whole South China Sea is being either controlled or claimed by China, right? So before this agreement, it was militarization of South China Sea by China, right? China has constructed ports, military installation and airstrips, particularly in the Paracel Island or Spratly Island. Philippines seek response and help from other countries as well. So here comes the role of United States in this South China Sea. To avoid this tension, now both of the countries came into agreement, and they are now trying to resolve the conflicts as far as this particular shoal or second Thomas shoal is concerned. Let's look into the map. This is the whole South China Sea. There are major islands which are important for prelims point of view. This is Paracel Island, which is in conflict between China, Taiwan and Vietnam. This is Scarborough Shoal or Island, which is in conflict with China, Taiwan and Philippines. And this is Spratly Island, which is in conflict with China, Vietnam, Philippines and Malaysia. And this is the 9-dash line in between this South China Sea that is claimed by China, and its validity is not accepted by any of the international body or the major countries, right? Outside 9-dash line, there are also some islands which are in conflict with China and other country. For example, Natuna Island is in conflict between China and Indonesia. Anambus Island, conflict with China and Indonesia. Again, Riau Island is in conflict between China and Indonesia. So far, we have discussed all the important articles for today. Now, let's do some practice questions. So, first question is, which one of the following countries does not have territorial disputes with China in the South China Sea based on 9-dash line claims, right? Vietnam, yes. Philippines, yes. Indonesia doesn't comes under 9-dash line claims, so no, not 3. Malaysia, yes. Japan, no. So the answer is C part, 3 and 5 only. Second question, consider the following statements. The FSSAI is the authority to approve manufacturing, storage, distribution, sale and import of GM foods in India. Yes. The GMOs are regulated under rules for the manufacture, use, import, export and storage of hazardous microorganisms, genetically engineered organisms or cells, 1989, under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. That is also correct. So both the statements are correct. C part is the correct answer. Third question is, consider the following statements about satellites used for weather forecasting in India. GSAT 1 and GSAT 2 are the major satellites used by the Indian Meteorological Department, IMD, for weather forecasting. This is incorrect statement. The correct is INSAT 3D and 3DR, right? Second is, weather forecasting satellites are placed only in geostationary orbit for continual tracking. This is also incorrect. So correct option is D. Next question, with respect to ACER report, consider the following statements. ACER focuses on assessing the quality of higher education. This is incorrect. It uses sample-based door-to-door service in both rural and urban areas, rural district. Okay, so choose the correct option. D would be the correct answer. Next question, consider the following pair, straight and connected water bodies. Luzon Strait, it is between South China Sea and Philippine Sea. This is correct. Mindoro Strait, between Philippine Sea and Sulu Sea. No. Malacca Strait, between Andaman Sea and South China Sea. This is correct. So option B is correct. Now let's look into mains practice question. The question states, the role of media in democracy is often hailed as the fourth pillar, yet its influence and impact on the democratic process are subject to intense scrutiny. See, when you read the question, specifically the mains related question, you can see here that this part of the question not asking anything from you, right? It's just a statement and that you have to assume as truth, right? So even in UPSC, they state something and they are not asking anything in that particular statement, right? In subsequent statements, they are asking something. So we have to keep track on that as well. So this is just a statement and there's nothing that this statement is asking, right? So we just have to accept this statement as a correct statement. We have to accept this as a fact. Okay. Next part is critically analyze the evolving role of media in shaping democratic ideals, institutions, and public opinions, right? So now we have to analyze the role of media, and that too the evolving role of media. So we have to discard the traditional role. We now have to focus on the evolving role of media in shaping the democratic ideals first. Second, shaping the democratic institutions and shaping the public opinion in both the ways, positive way and negative way, because it has been asked to analyze critically, right? So in introduction part, you can briefly define the concept of democracy, highlight the significance of media as fourth pillar. In body, briefly discuss, you need to discuss or analyze the evolving role of media in shaping democratic ideas as a positive, as negative, institution, positive, negative, and public opinion, positive and negative. Then comes to conclusion part, you have to emphasize the need for a responsible and unbiased media to play a constructive role in strengthening democratic values. Conclude with reflections on the future challenges and opportunities for media in maintaining its pivotal role in democracy. Through this, we are concluding our discussion for today. Please like, share, and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much.